Welcome back to our live training session. In this tutorial, we're going to be taking a look at setting up launch control, setting up a burble style effect. So we have that kind of popping and banging on overrun. We're also going to be setting up our gear detection and then taking a look back into our boost control so we can do a little bit of refinement in our boost by gear option. Once we set up gear, then we can go back in and fill our boost by gear chart out and then make sure we're offsetting based on ethanol content, based on our gear, based on engine speed, and based on our trim pot position, what we want the boost to be at. So it's going to give us the ultimate refinement in power delivery for this car. So we have a whole bunch of things to talk about and take a look at. But the very first topic I want to talk about here for the beginning of this training module is where we left off in our last training tutorial. Specifically, we were getting a weird drive-by-wire fault problem and the throttle was dead. It wouldn't even fire up and start. So I was able to quickly resolve it. Let me talk about what I did. So what I was noticing is that the e-throttle duty cycle, so the output control to open or close the throttle blade, didn't seem to be working. Now I had just the key on, the engine was off. What I actually realized was if we go down here in our e-throttle setup, if we move down here, the run when stalled option, this was set to quiet throttle. I did that because the throttle buzzes when I have the key on engine off and it is consuming power. It can get a little bit annoying, so we can set it to our quiet throttle. That's going to shut down the actual output to the servo control, to the throttle body, so you shouldn't hear that buzzing noise as the key on as the engine's off. But as a result of going into the quiet throttle mode, the actual duty cycle output wasn't controlling or doing anything, which makes sense. So I was noticing that that was showing again, I think it was at 0. It seemed like the throttle was dead. And when I did try to start it, it wasn't actually firing off. It was trying to fire and it was dying, firing and dying. Now that was a separate topic. In order to get around that, I'm gonna go leave it on this run throttle option. I have it on now. In order to get around that, I actually went into our e-throttle setup mode. I just went to, it was previously to the on, which takes a look at all of the states between the throttle position sensors, between the accel pedal position sensors. If anything's out of order, it'll shut the throttle down to make sure you don't have a runaway throttle situation. That's actually what it did, which is actually a good thing, so we didn't have any kind of problems or any kind of safety concerns there. We do want to turn that back on, but I put it into setup mode and I just started to sweep the throttle, and I noticed that, again, the throttle blade wasn't moving, and the status down here, the fault codes, was showing that it hit the minimum duty cycle clamp. In order to get around this, I cleared out the codes. So I just went over here to event log, and then I cleared ECU fault codes, which cleared out that code, showed no errors. But then what I was noticing is that the TPS main and sub here were off. Specifically, the sub wasn't tracking to the main. So I just went back into the TPS calibration, and I did another calibration process again to recalibrate the TPS main and sub sensors so they're tracking properly now. We can see they're going to be tracking right. They're within maybe 1/10 or 0.2%. That's all good, so that's all back in order. And once I did all that, the engine fired up and ran. So don't know exactly what happened there. It was a little bit weird. We did hit that hard limiter, which seemed to potentially cause a problem that previous pull. I don't know if that did something weird with the throttle position calibration. I don't know, but it's fixed now and it seems like it's all in order. So we'll put the e-throttle mode back on again, which means that it's in the failsafe mode where it can go in and fault itself out and limit throttle, so we don't have a potential runaway throttle situation. Let's go ahead and store that real quick. What I want to do here is just go save our file before we jump in and do any actual further tuning. The last tutorial we were calling normalized knock mode. We set up the normalized knock. We set up an oil pressure sensor. We verified our cranking fuel on cold start with ethanol. All that was good. We got all that worked out. So this tutorial, we're going to just call this, let's just say launch control, just so we have that set. So the very first topic here of this tutorial, where we really need to go in to set up the launch control or to even set up our boost by gear function within the boost control, is to set up our speed sensor and then set up gear detection. So this is the very first step. When we do launch control, we're going to be turning launch control off based on vehicle speed. So as soon as the vehicle moves, it's going to turn that launch control feature off. So we need to set up speed and we need to set up gear. So the speed sensor needs to be set up when we're doing the launch control. The gear detection needs to be set up, which relies on engine RPM and speed in order to use the boost by gear function. So what we're actually going to do here, let's move over into we have our VSS gear window. Let's go jump in here and do our GP1 vehicle speed. So right now we can see this is labeled as vehicle speed. This is the default configuration that Link actually places in here. We see the source is set up on digital input 2. And then we can see the pull-up is on and the active edge is falling. So it's a Hall effect signal sending a 0 to 5 volt square wave pulse out And that's how how Link is going to count on this digital input what's going on with the speed sensor. Now with this, we go down, there's a calibration ID. I've actually drove this and calibrated this on the dyno. I simply moved this number around until what I was seeing being broadcasted on the speed reading matched what the dyno is showing for a speed. Now, if you don't have a dyno, you could do this just looking at a GPS device. So that process was already taken care of already. One thing to note here is that the calibration in the plug and play Link file is set to 0, which obviously is incorrect. So you'll probably be starting off with somewhere between 2 to 250 for a value with a plug and play K-Series application to get you going. And then again, the easiest way to do this is actually drive the vehicle, get a GPS, some kind of GPS device, or even have a GPS app on your phone and drive at, say, 50 miles per hour, and make sure that what you're seeing coming out of your speed source, so right now my acceleration and my driving speed source, so it's called the driving wheel speed, which is my front wheels, that's going to be what we're looking at. Coming in here, looking at the driving wheel speed, make sure that your driving wheel speed matches your GPS device within about a half mile per hour, 1 mile per hour. Adjust your calibration value here until they match as close as possible. That way you know that it's calibrated. So I've done that already. Now the next step here is, let me go ahead and fire it up real quick. We're gonna go here into gear detection, and let's go here to our gear detection mode. And we're gonna go here and set this on RPM speed. So RPM speed is gonna allow us to calibrate manually the gearing for our gear detection. So it's gonna look at the difference or the ratio between RPM and speed. So right now we have the number of gears we need to set. There's a option here for...
Thanks for checking out our teaser clip. If you want to see the rest of this video and more than 500 hours of current EFI training we have to offer, make sure you click right here. If you want to go and check out more teaser clips from this training course, click here. And you don't want to miss any of the videos we're going to be releasing on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and click here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.